Ross Walters, how you doing?
Doing great, sir. How about you?
Oh, never better. I'm just really living, you know?
Yeah.
Happy early Thanksgiving to you and yours.
Thank you. That means a lot coming from you, and I'd like to extend the same sentiment back to you. Ethan, buddy, how are you doing? Cricket. No, Ethan, seriously, how are you doing? Cricket. Okay, guys, he's not here because he's probably out of the hospital at this point, right?
He's at home.
He's at home.
Yeah. They went home yesterday.
They had their baby boy, Temple.
That's right.
Meredith put in some long, hard hours there in the labor and delivery ward.
You heard any? I haven't. I don't want to bug them.
Right.
And I'm sure that it's probably the same with you. I haven't heard any details.
Yeah.
About what happened.
Rachel was texting Ethan kind of in the moment because she was like gonna be their like very informal doula. But then they got like a real doula, and so she didn't. But he was like telling her some of the specifics of what was happening, and she was like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. So I kind of know what happened because of that. Maybe we could get into the nitty gritty details of that off air.
Yeah.
Because I'm just not sure Meredith wants that, kind of sensitive,
an open book, though,
sensitive info. Yeah, well, it's a little graphic. So
great.
We might have to put the explicit little E sign on our podcast, which I know can't do that.
No.
Are we explicit?
No way.
What amount of cussing necessitates an explicit?
I think you might mark yourself as explicit.
Yeah.
But like maybe, so I haven't done so. Mm-hmm. Maybe if I don't do that and then they really study it and found some just vulgar talk.
Yeah.
We could get marked by the algorithm somehow.
Sure.
AI. What do you know about AI, dude? Like Allen Iverson. Like, do you have a favorite Allen Iverson moment?
I can only really think of one.
The practice moment?
What was the practice moment?
Like, we're talking about practice. You don't know that interview?
No.
Pretty famous. So he was like late or didn't show up for practice during the week. And forgive me, fans, listeners, if I'm botching this. But in the weekly press conference, someone asked him about it. And he was like, we really going to talk about practice? Like, it's practice. We're talking about practice. And
yeah.
So, he put that back to him. And then, I'm sure he went and dropped 40 points with 10 assists or something. But
right.
Which is interesting because he was like, you have such raw talent like him. He was great. His career just there wasn't much longevity to it. And then you have someone like Kobe, who was raw talent but practiced 8-10 hours a day. He would start practicing at 4, stop at 7, take a break, practice from like 11 to 3, break, and then practice from like 4 to 6.
Jeez.
Like everything he did was basketball, and he's like obviously one of the greatest ever.
Right. Makes you wonder if Allen Iverson would have done that. How much greater he could have been.
Yeah. Maybe not
greater.
But maybe.
I just think that so much of greatness is the mental toughness part. Because, growing up for me with sports, that was always my weakness, was mental toughness. Like I was big. I still am big. And so that was an advantage. And I was kind of still am athletic. But I sometimes I just didn't have that like resiliency and mental toughness to like, I don't know, just to believe that I'm the biggest, baddest dude on the field or the court. Like, I feel like everyone needs to think that to be able to carry themselves with enough vigor and confidence.
You just kind of have to like act a little bit. Like, I guess what I'm saying is, if you walk in to the room, like you come out pregame and you're just like walking around like you own the place. Do you think that will get into the head of the person you're playing against, or like get into your own head that you are that dude? You got the dog. There's a dog in you,
There's a dog. Yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely a little bit of both. I can remember being intimidated by, certain
personalities.
Kids and personality. I got intimidated. That was one of my big flaws, is looking across the ball from somebody or playing basketball or whatever, and seeing somebody, and I was like, that's the dude. And then I'm kind of like, it makes me doubt myself.
And you play worse.
Then I play worse.
Yeah.
It's literally all mental. Mm-hmm. That 100% of that is mental. Sure, I'm not the best ball player, and certainly back then
bud.
I wasn't. But it's like, if you think you are, and then you practice like you are, then you probably will be.
Yeah.
And I can just remember so many times, like I would be in my head in a game. I would just be missing shots, whatever. And somebody would just be like, I would be on defense and somebody would be driving the ball on me. And I would already have it in my mind that they were going to smoke me.
Oof.
Like they would start running at me, like driving. And I'm like, I'm screwed. But that is literally all mental.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. I would agree. Makes me wonder how you can train that. Like, what's the training regimen?
Yeah.
Like, if Jude wants to play some sport, how do I instill a mentality of nothing this person can do will make them better than me? Like, I'm the best out here.
Yeah.
Because it's funny, because you have to. That's the funny thing about athleticism is, like, the best people, in my opinion, the most inspiring people are the ones who are humble, but like clearly they know they're the best.
Yeah.
And so training that, one thing I want to train him to do, if he wants to play sports,
Sure.
is never celebrate. I want him, from the time he is 5 years old,
Yeah.
and he scores a goal in soccer or gets a shot off in a basketball game, I want to be like, you never celebrate.
What? Why is that? Why do you have that?
I think the stone cold killers are badass.
Yeah.
Like, even like that's one thing I always respected about Julio Jones when he was a Falcon.
Yeah.
He like would score a touchdown when he rarely did. Let's be real, and he would just like walk off.
Right.
Or Michael Jordan in one of the finals games or one of the playoff games, like knocks down the game winner at the buzzer and just like turns around and just like walks away. Which is funny because the next year he did the same thing and he like jumped into his players' arms and stuff.
Yeah.
And I understand the championship. I just think there's something to that. There's something to always maintaining the stoic attitude, because it's like the Bill Belichick, Nick Saban thing. It's like,
Yeah.
throughout the entire year, the time they smile is when they win the championship.
Sure.
And just if you always express really high highs, then I think that you're also going to express the low lows.
Yeah.
So if you can just maintain a good baseline at all times, probably good to go. Which the Julio thing, I watched him score a touchdown for Tampa Bay a few games ago, and he like celebrated. And I was just like, has it been that long, Julio?
That's funny. I recently heard somebody talk about how he was studying. He was talking about this coach who was trying to figure out which players he wanted to bring onto his team. And one of the first things he looked at was how they celebrated, how the players celebrated when they scored a touchdown or whatever it was, made a big hit. And if they celebrated in this sort of like self-centered, egotistical way,
Like hit the gritty kind of thing?
maybe, yeah, then that says something different than somebody who celebrates with their teammates.
Yeah.
And, kind of like hugs the team, whatever, like, especially when it's involuntary. Like whenever somebody scores a touchdown and their entire team just like mobs them, that guy is a good team player. And so, yeah, on the whole topic of like, what do youth sports for my kids, like I want them to think they're the best, but ultimately I want them to learn life skills. And like thinking you're better than everybody isn't always the best life skill, which is where the humility comes in too. I think that maybe what we're saying when we're saying you're the best on the field, like you're the best on the field, is more speaking to like resiliency than it is to like
ego.
Yeah. And everybody sucks and I'm great. It's more about confidence.
Well, it's just like Josh Allen. It's a good, I feel like is a good reference point. Like when you watch him play, you just know that he knows he is the best player on the field because he is. Like he'll, bust off a 10-yard run, like take a huge hit or like lower his shoulder and then like stand up and like talk smack.
Yeah.
But like he doesn't
got that dog in him.
he's got that dog in him. There's no doubt about it. But he doesn't exude that in his press conferences. He doesn't. He's not like. And the bad side of that is like Jalen Ramsey, who just like kind of makes an ass of himself all the time.
Well, yeah, I mean,
in his interviews, anyways, or like talking smack about other players before the other game. Like, I would not be very proud of that if I, saw. I would probably suggest to my son to not do that.
Sure. Well, and they're probably both equally as passionate about the game.
Yeah.
They're probably both good teammates. Like, I bet Jalen's a good teammate.
Yeah.
And I bet it's for somebody like Josh Allen, it might be a little bit easier to say he's a better teammate just by the way he carries himself. But I bet they both have like extreme loyalty to their guys next to them. And there was so much I learned from playing sports growing up. So much. Like, I think one of the things that I still carry with me, one of the things that has like stuck with me the most from youth sports is being pushed to your limit. And oddly enough, this manifested itself the most in cross country, where you are running, a 5K in they're high school races. They're not crazy, but it's rough conditions, or at least like varying conditions. You're on asphalt, you're in the mountains, whatever. And there's that last stretch where you've been running pretty much almost as fast as you can the whole time. And then you have the last stretch where you can see the finish line. And then you run even faster while you're the most tired. That feeling is, I still have never felt anything like that in my life. And I still get that feeling sometimes when I run. Like, whenever I run now, I don't always like finish with a sprint or whatever, but sometimes I do. And you just back to the mental thing, like there are just levels of effort and human ability within ourselves that we only access through mental toughness and through willpower. And like, especially in cross country, when you're like racing, the guy next to you, you both have been running pretty much as fast as you can the whole time in this long distance race. And then you sprint on this last, little 100 meters
it's like
or whatever.
Only one of you is going to have the dog in you,
Only one of us. Yeah. And it basically comes down to mental, because like you're probably both just as fast.
Yeah. If you're finishing the race near each other.
Yeah. And I feel that today, like even at work or in parenting or in relationships or in exercise or whatever it is, like it's so good for us to push ourselves to our limits so that we can see what our limits are. And so that like like I feel like I just kind of came out of a season of not pushing myself as much as I want to, much as I should. And that feels, it kind of just feels like you're coasting, like you're still like living life. You're doing good. You're doing good things. But the feeling of pushing yourself where the only enemy you have is yourself and your own laziness,
Yeah. And if you push yourself in one area, you're way more likely to push yourself in all other areas. I think you see that often where, I don't know, my experience is a lot of the honors students and and at least around where we were growing up, it's like, you watch a TV show and it's like you have the jocks and you have the nerds. But I feel like all of the kids who like push themselves in school were like athletes a lot of times, which is interesting.
Yeah. I feel like that wasn't always the case in terms of like pop culture. Like jocks are known for slouching or whatever, but that did feel like the case in our school, which is weird.
Yeah.
But
how about that? Dude, if Giselle and Phoebe do want to play basketball, it's looking like you'll have a set of twin towers out there, though.
Yeah. Giselle's really going to have to up her coordination level, and her speed. But we were playing catch last night, and she's really starting to put it together. Like catching the ball. Not that I need to prove myself to anyone on air, but I don't care if my kids play sports. I seriously don't. I just want them to do what they want to do. But if they do play sports, I will be happily supporting because I love sports and I grew up playing. But so, okay, we can move on from this. But rank. So growing up, when I say growing up, I mean like, 7, 8 years old, all the way until, let's call it 15. Can you rank your interests and passions? Like what were your top 3? And why?
My top 3 interests and passions. Probably like, it's funny, dude, because it's like I played guitar that entire time. I just didn't have the motivation to practice. And that's kind of just always been my story with that. It's like, I think I could, especially as I got later high school, it's like if I rehearsed for something, I could play it. But it's just like the willingness to practice on such a deep level that it's like second nature.
Yeah.
It's just like I never got to that point. So I would put it up there because it was amongst, so like guitar.
You were kind of the guitar guy in school.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember.
Video games. I mean, I just played a lot of video games growing up.
Yeah. Like COD.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to go way back, it was Halo.
Yeah.
Halo was like even before that, like, I used to have these like Dragon Ball Z games I'd play. Mm-hmm. I went to like some Star Wars games, Halo, COD, etc.
Yeah. Did you do any hunting?
Hunting?
Yeah.
I've done my share of hunting.
But it wasn't one of your main interests?
Definitely not. Okay. Definitely not. I even now, it's like I live in a pretty primo spot, and like if there's a morning I should be hunting, it's like this week, and I just can't make myself get up and go sit in the cold.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not a passion, so it makes sense.
Yeah. I guess, I don't know, like I played sports from 7 to 15, so probably basketball. I definitely like basketball more than baseball, and those were the only 2 sports I played. Mm-hmm. But I definitely liked watching football.
Yeah.
In that age range.
Me too, man.
Like I loved, especially just like middle school to high school. Just I went to a lot of Georgia Tech games. They were good in that time. So
yeah, that probably helped.
Hey, they beat number 13 North Carolina on Saturday.
Really?
Yeah.
Great.
Got two ranked wins under their belt this year, and the coach that got fired had 0. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Well,
But,
ACC.
yeah, all we have to do to get bowl eligible now is just beat Georgia on Saturday.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so-
well, that should be easy.
Shouldn't be too tough. I think we're only like a 36.5 point underdog. So
Yeah. Should be good. We thought it'd be fun today to talk about. Okay, I mean, we've been doing Valor for 6 years.
that's right.
6 years now. What the heck did we think Valor was going to be when we were first starting? Because I think a lot of the cats that listen to this show are starting companies or they're entrepreneurially minded.
Manure.
Yeah. So they're thinking about maybe starting something one day. And we've done a fair amount of content geared towards that. But let's do some more, baby.
Yeah,
you want
let's just
to?
press into that.
Let's press into that. But specifically, the most base way to ask the question is like, what did we think we were getting into? Or like, what did we want Valor to become? But really, like, what we're talking about here is vision. You know, like we heavily emphasize our mission, vision, and values. We've talked at great length about values, and values are the core principles that keep us on track towards our vision. I think we've talked about vision a little bit, but maybe not in these terms. But I'm trying to think back to the earliest idea I could conceive of what I wanted Valor to be. I think I just wanted to open a coffee shop.
Yeah.
I think that was what we were trying to do. This may seem like a simple topic, and it is kind of simple, but I think it's very effective and very important to have a direction that you're heading in. Because if you don't, and you just do, whatever works or whatever comes to you, then sometimes that works out. But a lot of times you're just kind of going to and fro, and you're not focusing your energy and time towards a certain thing. So if you're focusing your energy and time in a business towards just whatever happens or whatever works, then you may completely miss out on something that you really want. And just to even boil it down even more, running a business, so much of it is like, what is even driving you to do this? Because if you don't have, certainly money, that's definitely something that has drove me to do this. Just, not that we make a lot of money at all, but just to have a job, provide for family.
That's such a, people think that's bad now.
Yeah.
And that's like kind of annoying. It's like if you do anything for money, that's like anytime, there used to be a lot of people who would talk some smack about like Octane selling to Revelator.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, just like a guy owned Octane. Like, you don't know what's going on with this guy. And like, he's built this career, and like, he got to take care of his people.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people were upset about that. Definitely partly because of what you're saying, as far as, sell out,
Yeah.
and then also because of negative, the transition itself was negative in those organizations. I think most of the buzz was around that.
Yeah.
But to your point,
but there was definitely buzz around like, this guy's a sellout.
yeah,
Same thing with Blue Bottle, and Stumptown and whatever else. It's just like, you don't know what you would do in that situation until you were actually there.
yeah,
Like, somebody walks up and offers us, they wouldn't, but somebody walks up and offers us $20 million for Valor. What do you think you're going to do?
probably take it.
Same. I'm
Right.
on my way to Montana, like
Yeah,
summer home,
Yeah.
So,
but what it comes down to is what is driving you to do this, and a vision. Money is definitely part of it. We all have to make money, and a vision is another really big part of it. Do you even want to go towards the vision that you've laid out?
Some people's vision is scale,
Yeah.
Like think about all the tech companies out there who start like startups in goal a lot of times. I mean, sure, their marketing says one thing and they might have mission, vision values, but like most of these startup founders are doing this for an acquisition.
Yeah.
Like that's where they're going to go. So if you wanted to even do that with your coffee company, like you're gonna run it.
You're gonna buy some Eversys.
Yeah, Eversys all day.
Like when we started Valor, I mean, there's a lot of different directions we can go with this, but just specifically speaking of scale, when we started Valor, we were like, this is going to be our lifestyle company. Like, not lifestyle brand, but what I mean by lifestyle company is like, it's our 5+ day a week job
until we're 60.
Yeah. To manage this thing, to like, we are physically running it. If you have that mentality going into starting a company, you're going to do it way different than if you started it with large scale in mind. Because a huge part of our coming into this, our mindset was like, we don't want to take investors. We want to have complete control. We want the ownership split to be 33 between myself, Ethan, and Riley. And the thought of having an outside voice or having, like, God forbid, outside like control, like in other words, an investor joining in and having that person weigh in, that was like detestable to us. Like we were like, we would never do that. And we still haven't done that. And we'll get into this later as far as like what Valor has become and how that's evolved. But in the beginning, we were like, we're going to control this entire thing. This is going to be like, this is our passion. This is what we're going to do until indefinitely. If you were going to start a coffee company with scale in mind, you'd probably get investors, right? Like you would get people that you do want their opinion. You do want their expertise, and they also happen to have money. And I guess you'd probably start with one coffee shop, but the model of that coffee shop would need to be replicable enough to where you can replicate it fast. I don't know how it sounds so hard to let's say you were trying to open 5 cafes in the first 2 years. They were very simple operations. It sounds so hard to do that while having this like rich company culture. I don't know how to do that. I bet somebody else does. But so I think in the beginning we just really wanted it to be a coffee shop. But the problem was we didn't have the money or expertise to do that whatsoever because we were 19 years old. And so that's kind of where, if you know our history at all, you know we started off as a coffee cart. And so that's where that whole idea came from, was like, okay, well, what's the lowest barrier of entry into this industry so we can get our feet wet? Because we were all working in cafes at the time. So our first step towards like autonomy, I guess, in a business, like having our own thing, was, well, we can run a Kickstarter and we can get a 0% interest business credit card, max that thing out, and put in 20, 25K and have like a little business. And so we didn't take any money from the business whatsoever for the longest time because it just didn't make sense to, because we were doing it on the side with our other jobs. But I think somewhere, so that whole time we were like, okay, we're going to do a coffee cart, and eventually, somehow, we didn't really know how at all, that was going to become a coffee shop somehow.
Dude, just to take a step back from there, I don't think, like, we just didn't have a vision when we first started, or there was like an unspoken one. It was more of just like you and I were interested in making coffee at home. We got a job at a place. We went to a lot of coffee shops. Like we lived in Dawsonville. We would drive to Atlanta. We would take weekend trips to Nashville because we just like loved coffee.
Yeah.
And we just would go somewhere and we would have, honestly, it's funny because this is where the roots really, really were. It's like we would go somewhere and it would be like a beautiful build out.
Yeah.
And we'd be like, this is sick. Like, I want to work in this. And we would, come back and we would go to our job at like a lame coffee shop.
Yeah.
And realistically, I think it was just like, we want to start a cool coffee shop.
Yeah.
That is the base of it.
Yeah.
We started, I found out about the Cat and Cloud podcast somehow. And I think it was in a magazine. I think it was in a Standard magazine and like a barista interview where someone said they listened to the Cat and Cloud coffee podcast. And I was like, coffee podcast?
Yeah. What's a podcast?
I didn't even listen to podcasts back then. And, listening to that definitely enlightened us on enlightened us on, some of the more values related stuff, some of the things deeper than just having a cool coffee build out. We were like, we don't have money to build out anything.
Yeah.
So let's just do something.
Yes.
And that's how, you got to have that dog in you. You
gotta
know?
have that dog.
Just to do something.
Yep.
And thus, Coffee Cart. And at that point, what was our vision, our mission statement?
To change the way people perceive coffee in North Georgia.
Wow.
Which really what that really meant was all these people are out here drinking Starbucks and Folgers, and we want to change the way they perceive coffee so that they start drinking specialty coffee, third wave coffee that tastes like apricots or plums or boysenberries, just for example. And that's really what it was. Like we're gonna. I think our first wholesale partnership was with a roaster in Brooklyn, and they, we brought in their most experimental coffees. Not their most experimental coffees, but in hindsight, like the coffees that we put on espresso were not great for like weddings and like the events that we were doing. So we were like, if we can just get people to try the coffee, they're going to love it.
Oh, yeah.
And that is not true.
No, it is not one bit.
Like,
think about the events we have done that we did right at the start where we were making pour overs and we didn't have half and half.
Yeah. To put a finer point on it, it was like, if I can get somebody to try this SL28 Kenyan that tastes like sweet potato pie mixed with acid.
Yum.
Like, I know they'll like it. And because I like it. And so we were just, the passion was there, but we were just like missing the point of. So now, I mean, just to fast forward a little bit and then we'll go back. We have a lot of coffees that are darker roasted, that are more accentuated towards sweetness as opposed to acidity. But we also have all the crazy coffees too that are like...
Got a lot of coffees that some people wouldn't like.
Right. And so our measure of success is found in our ability to matchmake with whatever somebody wants. And the darker coffees we have, it better be like the best damn version of a dark roast that there is. Mm-hmm. It's just that it's darker roasted. So, okay, we wanted to open a cool coffee shop because we saw the cool build outs in Nashville and we saw that they really, really cared about coffee.
Do you have a place that was like your creme de la creme of like what you wanted your coffee shop to be like?
Man. I remember seeing pictures of Verve and I was like, this is awesome. Like, it was colorful, which I thought was cool. There was lots of wood, kind of accents aesthetically. And I never wanted to roast coffee. Did you?
At the start, definitely not.
Like, I actively didn't want to.
Yeah.
Partly because we loved Cat and Cloud so much.
Yeah.
Like, so much that we were like, how could we ever roast? We have an amazing roaster. And they're obviously amazing. They're great. If you haven't ever heard of them, go buy their coffee. But we slowly started to pivot the vision, what we were trying to get out of this, where we're headed, what's our destination, towards being more of a coffee company as opposed to like, we want to start a coffee shop. Those are two different things. There was a little stint in there where we started to, I think we maybe have mentioned this on the podcast before, but we wanted to be a hospitality brand, right? So like a hospitality group. I can remember standing behind the cart during our pop-up and being like, let's just open one coffee shop, and then let's open different expressions of hospitality, hotel, restaurant, bar, car wash, not really car wash, but just different hospitality things. Because we were really getting into, we were seeing the gold in hospitality, and we were like, this is what we're really good at. And I think we were also really, really into, or at least I was really into making cocktails at the time. And so I was like, I want to open a bar. And I'm so glad we didn't go down that road. I think we could crush it if we were in the right stage of life, but I'm not interested. We also talked about opening a restaurant because we were like really, really into the restaurant scene and going to nice restaurants with our money, little money. But for a while, like, that's what we were kind of interested in. And I think we like maybe ran that past a few wise people in our lives, and they were like, you guys need to slow down a little bit. And, but I think that was awesome that we were interested in that. I think that was like really ambitious, optimistic. And it's like, whenever you lay out a vision like that, it says like, I believe in myself and I believe in what I'm capable of. Which I think is cool. And somewhere along the way, we just kind of got off of that, right? I mean,
yeah, it wasn't like a noticeable shift, I don't think. I think just like the more we learned, the more we decided we should probably niche down, which is definitely more important now than ever.
It probably started to happen around the time we started roasting.
Yeah.
Which was in July of, was it 2018 or 2019?
2018.
2018,
Yeah.
July of 2018. I remember our first roast day was July 4th, right? Or maybe like our first release day.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a big pivot. And so like, I think a good theme of our business that I would do again if I had to do it all over as an 18-year-old, like not now, but like if I had to start over back then, we always looked for the lowest path of entry with the least amount of risk and the maximum amount of ceiling. I think that's a good thing to do when you're starting a business. I already said how we did that with the cart. Instead of just giving away our equity and getting an investor, who I don't understand what kind of investor would want to invest in us at that point. But instead of getting an investor or a bank loan, but our credit wasn't even good enough to probably do anything at that point, we did a cart. And then when we started roasting, instead of, oh, well, if you roast coffee, you need a roastery, you need a warehouse. I mean, how are you going to do the fulfillment? And the roaster, those are really expensive. How are you going to buy that? So we toll roasted. Is that the right term?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say more like we rented someone's space.
We rented somebody's space, and we paid them per pound, which allowed us to start a roasting company. I would much rather do that than buy a small roaster.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, I think because what did we buy? We bought buckets bags, labels, a label printer,
Green coffee.
green coffee, and a sealer.
And we did it in your basement. We packaged in your
Yeah,
basement.
here's the deal, guys. If you drank coffee from Valor at that point, it was from my basement. All right.
Well, we roasted in Johns Creek. We did it once a week
Yep.
on Mondays. And we roasted all of our orders. And then we took that roasted coffee in your Civic to your house in Marietta, packaged, and then brought coffee back to Alpharetta. I think you stayed in Marietta and I brought it back to Alpharetta. That's another theme too, is like if you're gonna take the path of least, or like the path with the lowest barrier of entry, then get ready to grind and like do inconvenient, seemingly stupid things.
Yeah. Could you imagine yourself doing that now?
I do stuff like that,
But
but to that degree, no. I mean, I do things like that to get them off the ground now,
yeah.
but that for that to be such a core part of our business and that be how we do it is definitely we knew it wasn't sustainable. That was another thing that there was a mutual understanding between the three of us of we are going to embrace a set of systems that are not sustainable whatsoever, in the sense of they take too long, they're not cost effective. I don't even know what our margins were at that point, for roasted coffee, but we're going to do something for a season until some hopefully discernible point where we dial in the systems and get more efficient. But we can't really have our cake and eat it too. We can't really go towards that ideal place without grinding a little bit at first. Obviously, this is just part of living in the world, but I think that was also something that we learned, that trial by fire.
Yeah, for sure. It makes me feel thinking about how we had the dog in us back then versus now. In different areas.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, I'm soft now. I was able to handle that. But, I guess that energy is just channeled to different outlets.
And
like taking care of a kid.
Yeah. Well, I was about to say it's a season of life thing.
Yeah.
Like for people that are starting a business, trying to figure out what am I trying to do here?
Yeah.
Where do you live? What is close to you? Like what are the things you have to give your time to that are non-negotiable besides your business? Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, like starting a business, like I don't know if I could do I don't think I could do what I did with 2 kids and a wife.
And a job.
At this point. Yeah.
A different job to sustain yourself.
Yeah. It seems kind of impossible. So
yeah, I think about that now. It's like the time I want to put towards real estate, it's just like so skinny. Or like I really want to start my own YouTube channel, and I just like can't do it.
Yeah.
It's just not possible in my season of life.
Yeah, for sure. That's a huge part. We just have limitations with our time, and that's a good thing. Like that's good that we have that, because family obviously is the most important. It's way more important than your business. On a personal note, I remember when we were starting, it was right around the time that I was getting married, and kind of all of us were getting married around the same time. But somewhere along the way, I had a conversation with my wife, my newlywed wife, Rachel, and was like, hey, if this business is going to work, then we need to have a mutual understanding that I am going to have to work a lot. And I'm not like, that will by no means be easy, but this is the path like that we both have to agree to. And it wasn't like, it was a conversation. It wasn't like I was just telling her that. And that was just how it was. That wasn't it at all. It was like we were both, coming from different angles there and talking about how, okay, we both think this is worth it. Mm-hmm. Even now, like with my wife as a stay-at-home mom, whenever I go out and work, when I work this job and then I also do music stuff, she's working too. Like that means she's, on the clock, so to speak, alone, or with her friends, whatever, with our kids for longer. She's put on more of a strain, even though she's a stay-at-home mom, just as much as I am, or she's probably strained even more. And so, but like we both have that understanding that like, hey, for a season, this is what it's going to look like. And so I think that is probably another key to happiness in the midst of starting a business is that your loved ones, whether that's your spouse or your girlfriend, boyfriend, your family, whatever, your friends, like having that open dialogue about the season you're about to step into. And then they're able to offer you more grace in that season and more support, more understanding. There's always that moment where like I would work an 8-hour day at whatever coffee shop I was working at the time. And then we would get an info inquiry for an event that night for our coffee cart. And it's like, babe, I'm on the phone if you can't see. We have an event tonight. And it's like, in one sense, I'm so excited because we haven't had an event in a while. We're trying to get this business off the ground. But in another sense, I haven't really seen you in a long time. And so it's not like she has to be like bouncing off the walls excited about that. But she does have that understanding of like, we need to get this business off the ground if we're going to have like a career for our family, I think that's another really big part of starting something. But okay, so we started the roasting side.
I was just gonna say it's just all opportunity cost. It's like sacrificing today, because I mean it's no secret that we're kind of talking about providing for our families. It's no secret that the path to wealth in this country is most likely obtained through starting your own business. Like I don't know if you've ever looked at like the top 10 paying jobs. Number 1 is entrepreneur. It's either the top paying job or the least paying job. There's a big range, obviously. So, it was a lot with me and Michaela, like the conversation is always like, I'm doing this now, but like what it could be. Like it could be her, and like she works too. So it's like it could be you staying home with the kids or us like being able to retire early or whatever. That's definitely not my core reason for doing anything at Valor. But again, I don't think there's anything wrong, and neither should you, listeners, about doing your business for money.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm trying to think about like the main reasons our vision pivoted over the years. Why did we start roasting coffee?
Well, I just want to, it's kind of funny. It's like Valor failed its mission and vision.
The first one?
Yeah.
Yeah. How so?
Changing the way people perceive coffee in North Georgia and like opening flashy and like sexy coffee shops and stuff. It's just like, nah, we obviously pivoted from that, but in a way we failed it. Like, I don't care anything about changing the way people perceive coffee in North Georgia.
Yeah.
I care about people having, like uplifting experiences and like our cafe being a place where like someone who's having a tough go at it can come and kind of change that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're failures.
Dang it. Pivot. That's what a pivot is. I think the reason we started roasting coffee was just because we wanted to. I mean, maybe we just saw like more ceiling and more upward mobility and scale with roasting coffee. Do you think that was it? Or was it just like, we just want our own brand?
I mean, I think honestly, it was just, I think we thought there was a lot of money to be made from wholesale.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we thought that too.
We thought that that was the future, like, centerpiece of our business, which not saying it still isn't, because it totally can be, but there's a reason we're opening more cafes, people.
Right. Yeah, because the cafes feed into the wholesale.
Yeah.
But
I mean, yeah, so, open several cafes, and if you look at one individual entity after that, like, your wholesale / roastery is going to be doing the best because it's roasting so much for the cafes.
right.
But, yeah, there was that. And then, honestly, it's just funny to think about. I think we just, like, really wanted control over what coffees we offered. Like, the menu at, like, when you're working with someone else is like, especially, this is no, like, no shot to them whatsoever, but, like, we wanted, like, more of a static menu than what Cat and Cloud was offering. It was like, it's like really cool to be super seasonal and, like, and those sorts of things, but we pretty quickly implemented like menu slots.
Yeah.
And they have menu slots for sure. Like, but whenever we kind of got to like the more seasonal stuff, we would kind of look around and not see that with other roasters as much. So that's like, if you look at our menu now and you see like the different color boxes, like each color box has a purpose. So I think that was a part of it.
Yeah.
If I'm recollecting correctly.
Yeah, we really started to have that golden revelation for our business, which was matching like the top 1% of coffees and products with this like customer centric approachability.
Mm-hmm.
And that is definitely played out in our menu. Like sometimes with roasters, there can be so many coffees coming in and out and there can be no like continuity and flavor profile that Joe Schmo who's coming into the cafe is like, well, why'd you change it up? I liked it before.
Yeah, one time someone like sent us a nasty email or something because like the components of workers' comp changed and the notes changed.
Right. Yeah, and we were like trying to make it the same.
Yeah.
And so if that's another just vision piece, like for any company, like the vision for our roastery was we want to maintain very, very high quality and, like have very seasonal coffees and never bring in coffee that's old or whatever. And so still have that variety and that freshness and that seasonality, but also marry it with something that's very, very attainable and possible, which is simply like we're always going to have a fruity coffee on the menu. Mm-hmm. We're always going to have a floral tea-like kind of washed Ethiopian slot on the menu. So it's sort of a lot of roasters have the year-round coffees, and they're usually blends, and then they have the seasonal coffees that always change. But we just sort of took that year-round philosophy and applied it to the whole menu.
Yeah, and we still definitely have seasonal coffees. It's just like, instead of calling our fruity coffee something, it's just like it changes depending on season and stock.
Right.
So definitely, and we still call them seasonals. It's just like they all have a purpose on our menu.
Yeah.
And like right now, it's just one a piece. In the future, it might be multiple per menu slot as we scale.
Right.
But we just can't order that many coffees quite yet. Yeah, I think we swung really far in that direction. And that's kind of, I don't want to say, because at that point, we didn't say we want to match the top 1% of coffees with the top 1% of service. It was just like uplifting people through coffee, or we're here for you. Remember that?
Yeah.
That was it. And if you looked at our packaging at the time, our just like white bag packaging, like there was no information about the coffee, even whenever we did the custom packaging. Like it was very limited information about the coffee. Yeah, it had notes. Yeah, it had the name of the coffee or whatever. But like we swung really far in that direction, and clearly, we still do this practice some, but we hired no one with coffee experience intentionally.
Yep.
Because we wanted a clean slate and people who were like just focused on the customer experience.
Yeah.
How do you think that impacted our company positively? I mean, we all know how it impacted it positively. Like, how do you think it impacted Valor negatively before we narrowed in on our vision statement?
Yeah. I think that the three of us owners have never once had the thought that our quality doesn't matter.
Yeah, for sure.
I think internally we've always had the same vision, which is matching the top 1% of coffees and products with the top 1% of hospitality. I think we've always had that, but I think it's the power of conveying or not conveying that vision to your people that really moves the needle. And so at that point you were roasting the coffee. It's not like you were slacking or something. I think our coffees were as good as they could have been at the time, given our experience and given the machines we had and all that. But I do think that we're trying to grow out of this right now. I think the people that worked behind the bar were a lot more focused on the hospitality piece than the coffee excellence piece. And when we started Valor, it was only about coffee excellence. It was like, we want to hire the most experienced baristas out there so that everybody's pouring perfect latte art and everybody's talking about how this coffee tastes on V60 versus Kalita and how that's different. And, they're just like nerding out because that's what we liked. And we swung, like you said, way more towards the hospitality side. And I do think our quality suffered some. I think that this wasn't by any means a huge impact to our business, but I do remember hearing certain chatter in the industry about how our maybe we're not as high on the quality side. We're a lot more high on the like hospitality, like fun, bro-y side. Which
that's still some chatter.
Yeah.
Because of that just season of our business.
Yeah. Which, to be fair, I think matters way less.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Than I thought it did when we first started.
Yeah. And I think, if anything, we benefited from that thought of like, who cares what the people in the industry think about us?
Yeah.
Like, we're going to care what our customers think about us in some ways. I mean, obviously you want good terms with the coffee industry, but.
Well, especially at that point, like going back to what you were saying about the white bags and how we didn't have hardly any information about the coffee on the bags. We intentionally did that as a statement that like wasn't like this big statement or something, but like for us, it was like we were betting that nobody cares. Actually, we were betting that people pretend like they care about what the specifics are of the coffees, but they don't actually know, which I still mostly believe that effectively. But at that point, we were mostly just concerned with being an Alpharetta coffee shop. And I think for the purposes of just being a neighborhood coffee shop, that's completely fine to not have a ton of info on the bag. But as our vision has expanded to being more like a coffee company, we've included way more information about the coffees on the boxes. And just to reiterate, there was no point where we didn't care about that stuff. I don't want to say dumbed it down because it's not like people are dumb, but like we dumbed it down. We excluded, we abbreviated the information available to have a more concise and clear message of like our Ethiopian coffee was called Ethiopia, right? And I think it had like a little subtext of like, Gadeb, go TT or whatever. But it didn't have the like meters above sea level, which I'm convinced that nobody actually cares about. Still, it's just that the fact that you have it on your box says something about the quality, hopefully. I think, actually getting in the how many people that come into our cafe, how many people that come into our wholesale partners cafe, how many people that buy our coffee on our e-commerce actually look at the meters above sea level and they make a different decision than they would have knowing that information.
Yeah, it for us, it conveyed that we are serious about our coffee being top 1%.
Yeah. Right. So, again, back to that, like, we always cared about that. It's just that how do we properly convey that? I think we didn't convey it for fear of coming off pretentious, or we were, at the time, we were really getting into that story brand, which is like a branding agency, but it's also a book. And their biggest thing is like, be clear about what you do. Cut out all the noise of your marketing and your messaging and just boil it down to one phrase. Boil everything down so that when somebody looks at your product, they immediately know what it is and they immediately know whether they want it or not and how it's going to benefit them. And I still love that philosophy, and we still use that to this day. And so that's why we made the bag so simple at the time. And it's also why we didn't have pour overs. Like we were like, we only did coffee shots through our espresso machine, and they were good, but they weren't great. And so we've since implemented pour overs, and they're great. And we found a way to do it to where, thanks to technology, we can do it in a timely manner, in a consistent way. But yeah, that's interesting. Just, I think back to some of the industry chatter. And I don't know if you were this way, but when we first started the company, like, that was all I cared about, was like the industry chatter.
Yeah.
Which I think was partly because I was 19. And I think that was partly because the industry was chattering a lot more back then.
If it still chatters, maybe we just don't listen.
Yeah. Maybe so. But another thing we've pivoted to is, and we've kind of alluded to it, but making our brand a lot more of a coffee company as opposed to a coffee shop. Another way to say that is, like, we've emphasized our global brand as opposed to our local brand a lot more. And what that means is, like, the local brand is the people who are, like, here in town. How do they view our brand versus how does somebody in Missouri or Kansas view our brand, or the UK? How do they view our brand? These are all, markets that we have done business with. And so having that vision of having a global brand, it doesn't instantly make you a global brand. It just changes the decisions you make on your socials, mostly.
Yeah.
And in your packaging. And in one way it does that is, like, our Instagram is not merely a bulletin board for what's happening at our cafe. It's like engaging people all across the world. I think at one point it was just a bulletin board of, like, hey, new menu item at the cafe. Hey, new coffee at the cafe. Hey, here's a picture of the people at the cafe. Do you remember that transition that we made?
Yeah, I do. And I mean, by no means do we just not post about the cafe anymore, but I guess things are a little bit more tailored. It's just like, I think we really put it in terms of, like, bringing other people into the fun. Like, what's fun for the person across the country, the new croissant, maybe it's not that fun.
Yeah.
A funny video is probably a little bit more fun for them,
Right. Yeah. And then, I mean, to wrap it up to today, we are like, okay, we want to open like 3 or 4 or 5 cafes in the next 5 years. And we want to have a humming roasting operation that sends coffee all over the country and kind of the world. And we want to have a catering. You know, our cart is back in full swing doing events. And we want to be known as a company that puts people first, that uplifts everyone who comes in contact with our brand. And so we make decisions on the daily towards that vision. And we just somewhere along the way stumbled upon like, this is where we're going, you know? And I think so much of that was just doing like some internal soul searching of like, what do we want? What do we want? Because if we're saying we want to be the next Starbucks, that's a lot different than like what I just said. Mm-hmm. That my life is going to look way different. My family dynamic is going to look way different. My marriage is going to look way different. I'm going to play way less music if I want to be the next Starbucks. Like all that is just going to be different. So yeah, zeroing in on that vision brings so much clarity to where you want to go and how you want to get there.
Beautiful. So our vision now, to restate it, is matching the top 1% of coffees with the top 1% of service. And I feel like every day, everything we do is to that means.
Yeah.
And I think that's success.
Yeah. And there's the like philosophical conceptual side of the vision, which is what you just said. And then there's like kind of what we talked about today, which was like, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to open one cafe? Are we trying to be a local brand? Are we trying to be a global brand? Mm-hmm. How many employees do we want to have? Do we want to be like super active on social media, or is it just like a local homey thing? You know, there's all those like more actionable, practical, those are the things. The way you spend your money kind of like informs what your vision is. You know, like we spend our money towards those things. We don't buy things towards that things. We do buy things towards that end. We turn down opportunities towards that end. We take opportunities towards that end. So I think having that like philosophical, conceptual side of your vision is important to be able to convey it to your people, but also having that like, what's my 2-year, 1 year, 5-year goal? Where do I want to be? I think that all is just to get that as clear as you can. Don't feel like you have to know everything, but as clear as you possibly can informs so much about like being efficient with your time and money. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ain't that something?
That about wraps it, right?
I think so. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else we could possibly say. So, I just looking at our calendar here and just thinking about the next few weeks. I just wanted to give people an idea of if we're going to be off any of these upcoming weeks with the holidays. So we will definitely be off on Christmas Eve. No pod the week of Christmas Eve. The cafe will be open though. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll give people a picture of how we handled that. We made a Basecamp, our communication platform, post saying, "Hey, we don't know if we should be open on Christmas Eve or not. Does anyone want to work and make double time?"
Yeah.
And then some people were like, "Yeah."
Yeah. Which was an interesting practice. It's like, I think we all wanted to put ourselves in the shoes of our employees, which we always want to do, but especially with this, because like we're not working on Christmas Eve, that's for sure.
Yeah,
right, because we don't work in the cafe.
Just to be clear, I was looking at the wrong month. Christmas Eve is actually on a Saturday.
Oh, okay.
So we won't be off then. I will say this: we are going to take next week off.
What's next week?
Next week we are going to be you and I, and maybe Ethan are going to film our Kickstarter stuff. We just have to put some time and energy towards that.
Nice. We got to get down to that cafe too and work. Man.
Yeah, no joke. There's just like tile without grout on the wall.
I forgot about that, dude.
But yeah, so no pod next week, and then we should be back to regularly scheduled programming from then on out, because the 20th and 27th are Tuesdays, so we'll be around.
I'll be around.
Ross, is a pleasure. Is this our first me and you podcast?
This is our second one.
Do you remember what the first one was about?
I don't, but I remember it being perfect.
So we're 2 for 2 now.
We're a twofer at this point.
2 for. All right, love you.
Look.